Item number 12, discussion and possible action regarding the legal status of City Ordinance O-13-14 concerning the ban on single-use carry-out bags by retail stores. Now, this was put on the agenda by Council Members Sullivan and Connors, and I will defer to either Sullivan and/or Councilmember Connors.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
I will defer to our city attorney.
Thank you. That was
Before you speak, there are a lot of people signed up for this, and you all have your say.
just
It's just a one page here.
if you got a light, you can turn off that row. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, the council passed the plastic bag ordinance last year. It's been in place. You want me to switch? Yes, please. And most recently, the state legislature passed SB1241, which was aimed at a couple of things, one of which was to ban cities from banning plastic bags. And that legislation will take effect July 3rd. Please. So today, or tonight, I wanted to discuss the legal issues and options that the city of Bisbee has about that new state legislation. And let me tell you a little bit about how that came about. I was approached separately by two council members who were wondering whether there was anything that the city could do about the new state legislation, or whether the city just had to abide by it. At that point, I had a little familiarity with Arizona Charter City Law. I was familiar with it from having tracked a couple of City of Tucson cases where the city charter for the City of Tucson had certain election dates in it and partisan elections. The state legislature had passed legislation saying you could not do, cities could not do that, could not have partisan elections, and had to have elections in a certain time cycle. I knew the City of Tucson had won both times in court. And I knew they had won based on a charter city grounds, that charter cities, when they pass legislation, they can basically overrule state legislation to the contrary. But that's about all I knew. But since two city council members had asked me about it, I decided to research it further since they had asked. And rather than go to individual city council members and explain the results of this research, I thought it would probably make more sense to present to the whole council rather than individual members. And that's why we're here tonight. Slide, please. And I'm going to suggest to the council that most of this presentation be in open session. But I first wanted to review, for the benefit of the public, I know the council is real familiar with executive session law, but for the benefit of the public, the purpose of executive sessions. There are several purposes. One is for legal advice from your attorney, also to discuss pending or possible litigation with your attorney. But the language is may. The council may go into executive session. You don't have to just because you get legal advice from your attorney or discuss pending litigation. That's really up to the council. I would certainly like to make a recommendation on that from time to time when those issues come up, but it's a may, not a must. And the reason that you go into executive session for any one of a number of reasons is you don't want to prejudice the city's position. And sometimes when legal advice is given, particularly when there's possible litigation or pending litigation, you can prejudice the city's position because you want to have an open and frank discussion with your attorney by not only about strengths of a legal argument for the city, but also the weaknesses of it. And if you do that in public, then you lose that protection. Another example that's very, very, I think, easy to understand is negotiating a contract. When you negotiate contracts, you can do that in executive session. If the city was going to purchase real estate, it might direct the city manager to try and buy this piece of real estate at $50,000, but if need be, he can go up to $60,000. If you have that discussion in the open, you're going to give away your hand, and the party you're trying to buy the real estate from is going to ask for $60,000, and the city, it'll prejudice the city. Anyway, what I'd like to do tonight, my suggestion to the council is do most of the discussion of city charter law in open session, and then when we get to the point where I think we're starting to get down to the nitty-gritty about what are Bisbee's options, I'm going to recommend to the council we go into executive session, but that's pretty far down the road. So if the council would permit, I'd like to keep most of this in open session because I think it would be useful to the community to hear kind of the basic outlines of city charter law and why there might be some legal options that the city could pursue. So with that, next slide, please. Let's start with this. The Arizona Constitution passed in 1912. There was a lot of, at that time, there was kind of a progressive sweep throughout the country, especially in the western states, to include things in the Constitution. Some of them were passed by western states, some of them were not passed. But one of the progressive platforms that was passed was this concept that the best government is local government, that the people of the city know best for themselves what rules to pass and what not to pass, and what laws to pass, what not to pass, and that the local city officials are most accountable to their constituents, not the state legislature. So in the Constitution was this charter city provision allowing cities, if they went through a certain procedure, to become a charter city. And if they did, they were able to enact certain laws that were that would basically overrule any state legislation to the contrary. That sounds simple. In practice, it's pretty difficult. Next slide, please. Here's an Arizona revised statute which says, I realize how small this is. I wish I'd used bigger print when it looked big on the screen when I was staring at it. So one of the Arizona statutes that is basically is expanding on the constitutional provision says that when any of the provisions of a charter city are in conflict with state legislation, the provisions of the charter shall prevail. Again, that sounds pretty simple too. Next slide, please. But it's not quite that simple. And I'll get into it. It turns out to be a very, very complex area of the law, but I'll try and simplify it at the end. But let's start out with some of the complexities. I've put on this screen some of the statements that you get from courts when they're trying to interpret charter city law. The first one is a principle saying that the home rule provision, the charter provision, is to enable charter cities to be as nearly independent of state legislation as possible. The second quote is, a city charter, when regularly adopted and approved, becomes the organic law of such city, and all laws of the state in conflict are insofar as such laws relate to purely municipal affairs. And there you start to get some of the complexity, because not all charter city laws in conflict with state legislature prevail. It has to be about peculiar municipal issues. I'll expand on that in a little bit. Next slide, please. Now, those were some statements that would lead you to believe that the charter prevails in all cases, but there's a lot of statements by the courts that would lead you to the opposite conclusion. One of those is that an ordinance on a matter that is not solely of local concern is invalid if it conflicts with a valid state statute. The next case involved the city of Bisbee a long time ago in 1938. That municipalities have no power except those delegated by the sovereign, which in this case is the Constitution or state statute. Finally, where a subject matter is of statewide concern and the legislature is appropriated the field by enacting statute pertaining thereto, any conflicting ordinances are invalid. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to give you, those are some kind of general principles, and you can tell there's some conflicting general principles. So I'm going to try and give you some examples of cases where the city charters prevailed, and then I'll give you some examples of where state legislation prevailed when the two were in conflict. The first one I mentioned was were the first two cases up on the screen were cases that I told you I was familiar with when I was approached by two city council members. The first one, the city of Tucson had in their charter that municipal elections were supposed to be held on, I think it was odd-numbered years and not during the general election cycle. The state passed a statute saying all municipal elections had to be in even-numbered years in the general election cycle. And that would, the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the city of Tucson. The next case, same kind of thing, it only involved city of Tucson's nonpartisan elections, or I mean, say partisan elections. They had Republicans and Democrats, still do, run in city council elections. The state said all municipal elections had to be nonpartisan. And that one, again, in this case, the Arizona Supreme Court said city charter prevails over state statute. And the third one, example I gave was a home rule charter provision regarding some authorizing funds for some local purposes that arguably conflicted with state statute. Again, the charter prevailed. And in all those cases, what the courts were saying is, you know, things like elections, these are matters of a local concern. How you elect city council members and the mayor, those are matters of local concern. Sure, there might be some statewide interest in all of that, but we're on the balance, we're going to say that the city charter is going to prevail because it's mostly municipal concern, not statewide concern. Next slide, please. And these are some examples of cases where the state laws prevailed. One was on acquisition of public utilities assets. The second one, the court ruled the Corporation Commission had exclusive jurisdiction to regulate the operation of motor vehicles. I think that one was the city of Phoenix tried to pass a DUI law back before there were statewide DUI laws, and the court said, no, that's a matter of statewide interest. And I think you'll like this one. The third example was the city of Tombstone's charter tried to license gambling and in conflict with state law, and the court said, you know, the matter of gambling is of statewide interest more than it is municipal interest, and we're not going to allow the charter to prevail in that case. The case that I found that is most analogous to the city's plastic bag law would be the smoking ban case. In the late 90s, the city of Tucson, before there were statewide bans on smoking in restaurants, the city of Tucson passed an ordinance pursuant to their charter banning smoking in restaurants and other public, certain other public buildings. A restaurant owner challenged that law. The court ultimately ruled that the matter of smoking in local establishments was more a matter of local concern than it was of statewide concern, and therefore the charter prevailed and the state law did not apply to the city of Tucson. A couple of quotes from that case by the court. Safeguarding the general health, safety, and welfare of the community has long been considered a proper goal for municipal government. Second quote, to the extent she argues that smoking in restaurants is exclusively a matter of statewide concern beyond the realm of municipal regulatory action, we reject the argument. Both the city and state may legislate on the same subject when it is of local concern. But in this case, local concern prevailed. And finally, yeah, regulation of smoking in restaurants is a matter of local concern. So then we come to the issue of the ban on plastic bags. In SB1241, the state statute that prohibited bans on plastic bags, the legislature did what they often do in state statutes. I read a lot of state statutes. They start out by declaring that whatever they're legislating on is a matter of statewide concern. And in this case, they just said the regulation of bans and all other auxiliary bags were a matter of statewide concern. They found that the legislature found that small businesses are sensitive to costs and expenses incurred in complying with regulatory actions of a city or town, and that inconsistent regulation by cities and town hinders a small business from bidding from free and open competition. So there's several different issues, some of which I will get into if we go into executive session in a little bit more detail. But basically, the most fundamental issue in the case is whether the ban of plastic bags by a city is a matter of local concern, or is that more a matter of statewide concern? Let me quote. Well, I guess the first quote up there is basically, I'm paraphrasing what the court said in the City of Tucson case. But I think it's important in here that they said whether a state law prevails over conflicting charter provisions is a question of constitutional interpretation within the exclusive province of the courts. The second quote from the City of Tucson case, I think, kind of boils it down too. The concepts of local versus statewide interests do not have self-evident definitions. Many municipal issues will be of both local and state concern, and distinguish between matters that are properly subject to local versus state control often involves case-specific line drawing. So that's why it's never simple, and that's why lawyers love what we do, because we love to figure those things out. But let me, next slide, the Safeway, as you know, Safeway complied with the plastic bag ordinance. They actually helped draft the plastic bag ordinance, as I understand it. We had received some information that that Safeway had already stopped charging for paper bags, even though the SB1241 had not become effective. Also information that Safeway would be reintroducing plastic bags. So just to clarify that matter, before tonight's meeting, Mr. Johnson and I called the Safeway public information officer and explained that this information we had received, and she immediately said that is wrong. She said that Safeway intends to comply with the plastic bag ordinance, regardless of what the City Council chooses to do or not do. So anyway, that's some additional information that we thought was important for the council to receive. Kind of at the point in the presentation where I'm now at is the point where I would recommend that the council go into executive session to discuss some application of the cases we've been discussing to the plastic bag ban, some legal analysis, and also some legal options that are available to the city. It's council's choice whether to do that or not to do that.
Before we get to that point, we have a few people signed up to speak, and I'm going to let them speak before we decide to or not to go into executive session. So let's start off with Marie Minor.
Hi, Mayor and City Council and what's remaining of the public. Marie Minor, I live in the Briggs neighborhood, and I'm not going to be spending energy on trying to convince people about the pros and cons of the bag ban, because we've already been through that a lot. But one thing to be said, though, about going into executive session, remember that once they do that, they are not allowed to speak about any of it to the public. So therefore, we're shut out. So that's, you know, one sad part of it, is that we would be eliminated from hearing anything more. So I'm hoping that they won't go into executive session. The state legislators, in particular, the Republicans, tout state rights. I'm disappointed that they want to interfere with local rights by enacting SB 1241 that directly affects Bisbee. There is a possible coalition of 5 cities, of which they are Tempe, Tucson, Flagstaff, Peoria, and Mesa, that are forming to legally contest SB 1241. So I hope Bisbee will join this coalition of 5 cities. I'm going to quote just briefly, I'll be reading from a letter that the Sierra Club of the Grand Canyon chapter, they wrote a letter on April the 2nd, 2015, and they wrote it to Doug Ducey, the governor, in a hopes to get him to veto SB 1241. And this is something that our city attorney did not refer to at all, and so I want to make sure you heard it. This bill has two distinct and unrelated provisions. One provision is a prohibition on energy benchmarking, and then the other one is a prohibition on auxiliary containers, the bag ban thing. And this violates the single subject provision of the Arizona State Constitution. And so I wanted that to be stated. SB 1241 prevents Arizona cities and towns, as well as counties, from being able to require that their residents have better information to make more informed choices about where to buy or rent or locate a business. Consumers should be able to know the full cost of making investments in buildings, as well as for renting and leasing. That's one aspect. The other aspect is about the auxiliary containers. It undermines local control relative to efforts to limit plastic bags and other waste containers via ordinances that implement deposits or other measures. By the way, the city of Bisbee never got 1 penny on all those bag fees that were charged. So I'm a bit curious about how Safeway and others that charge for that, where that money went, because the city didn't get it. So we can't vamp on the city about that. SB 1241 also limits local communities' abilities to reduce waste by prohibiting requirements for deposits on plastic bags and other containers, something that is good for our environment and our economy. Dealing with plastic bags in the recycle stream costs the cities a fair amount of money. Programs to reduce plastic bag use have been effective elsewhere. There is no reason to ban local government for implementing them here. Sorry, I'm zapped. Good luck, folks, on your decisions.
Thank you, Marie Minor. Next, we were going to call up former council member Benny Scott.
Good evening, council. I'm Benny Scott. I live at 513 Harrison Street. My hat's off to you, first off, about the budget. I've been shot at 8 years. You duck well, and it's a heck of a job. I kind of feel like Mr. Budge. I hope you're not walking away from a well with a bucket with no bottom, but you guys have got a rough road to go. Now, my little thing about the bags. And I'm not going to get into a lot of bags because, number one, my wife was part of the bag lady, but that's all right. But when this issue all came up, and I'm going to slip off into something else. I remember when Mrs. Sullivan made a statement, she hoped people didn't leave Bisbee because of the bags. They're leaving. You can't buy anything in Bisbee to put in a bag. Safeway, Dollar Store, Dollar General, B&D, and Ace. That's all you've got. And what are you going to put in it? I want to buy a pair of shoes. I want to buy a baseball glove. I want to buy a shirt, some pants. You people, we have sitting in the Safeway parking lot 2 big buildings. I challenge you people to sit down, get your mayor, and get that gentleman right over there, because he's smart. He knows how to use a computer. Mr. Dunn says, let's increase our revenue. You need to get somebody back in them buildings. Even the service station out there in San Jose, it's closed. You're losing money there. This business is trying to put it, I don't care if you got a plastic bag, paper bag, or a gunny sack. You better find something to put in it. Thank you.
Thank you, former council member Benny Scott. Next, we will go to Mr. Eric Farner.
Eric Farner, 609 Bisbee Road. Councilman Connors, you're welcome. I don't know what you're thanking me for, but if I've been of any help, glad to have been of help. In regards to this issue, I'm kind of surprised that we're still focusing on it. As the discussions of the budget and other things, that Bisbee has a lot more important things to focus on than trying to litigate, this particular issue. My impressions of the statute and of having reviewed all of the videotapes of the debates is that the state believes that it is a matter of statewide concern. The state anticipated some of these objections and put into legislative history that, small businesses, as Hanson had discussed, are sensitive to costs and of the regulations that are in different cities that vary. And the House Committee on Rules and the Rules Committee attorney, they specifically addressed the question about the state statute unduly restricting charter cities' ability to regulate matters that are strictly of local concern. And their findings were that, and they concluded that the bill is constitutional and in proper form and passes muster. So I anticipate they're planning on defending that. I would suspect that the courts would be somewhat reluctant to substitute their judgment on legislative policy like this. The state is clearly prepared to defend against any challenge from Bisbee, and considering the city's past track record for winning lawsuits, we don't need this. I think that if we're going to educate people on how the state statute applies to the city ordinance, and so that the council people can educate their constituents about what it means, I think it's all very good and very well. I'm glad it's on the agenda for that reason. I think a better approach and a better use of the city council's time perhaps might be to draft one of the resolutions supporting the state legislature, or a citizens initiative to draft a statewide ban that would be uniform across the state and address some of the concerns that the state legislature had pointed out. And I would be one of the first people to support the council in drafting something like that. I would sign a citizens initiative proposing a statewide uniform ban. And that's all I have to say on that. If anybody has any questions from the citizens' point of view, I'm more than welcome to answer them. There being none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eric Farner. Next, we will go to Ms. Susan Blackford.
Good evening again. For a little bit of levity, I'm quoting, batter your hatches. It's going to be a bumpy night. I just one thought, I hope I heard her name right. Serena, that's with the nice radio guy, just shared with me on my $5,000 objection to the film festival that it was a donation and it will not cost us anything. And I wanted to thank her for correcting me and sharing that so I could get the correct information out to everybody.
Allison.
Pardon me?
Allison.
Is that her name, Allison? Thank you. Okay, thank you. She was speaking to my deaf ears, but I didn't want to correct her. So thank you for that. Anyway, I thank her for taking the time to do that. Okay, you guys, here we go. My feelings, as you know, O1314 was created on a false negative. Hearing all the talk about O1314 being grandfathered in, I wrote our state senator, and this is her response. When I explained that Councilperson Serena Sullivan and her group was stating all over town that SB1241 was grandfathered in, let me read to you what our state senator said. Just a few lines. And I have sent this to Britt and to the mayor and to the city clerk. There was no grandfathered language in this bill. I have double checked with our attorney, and it will go into effect July 3rd, and cities will be subject to the bill as written. I also brought with me some the bills, SB 1241. I will not go ahead and read all of this for you, but there are a few things that the attorney let out. left out. Boy, it's a long night, y'all. The purpose stipulates the regulations regarding energy and auxiliary containers are a matter of statewide concern and prohibits city, towns, and counties from enacting regulations regarding energy measures or reporting or auxiliary containers. Sorry. Defines auxiliary containers as reusable bags, disposable bags, boxes, beverage cans, bottles, cups, and containers that are made out of cloth, plastic, extruded polystyrene, glass, aluminum, cardboard, or other materials that are used for transporting merchandise to or from a business or multi-family housing. The reason I took the time to read that, it just doesn't include plastic bags, just so you all know, in case you haven't taken the time to read that. Okay. I tried to talk to Councilperson Serena several weeks ago on the phone about her internet remarks on the website, The Intruder, that our law was not grandfathered in. Then last Tuesday night, May 12th, after the cashier from Safeway asked Nina, a bag lady, about the grandfathered in part, I tried to give Councilperson Serena a copy of the bill. She refused it and pushed it away and said that she was going by what our new attorney is telling her. Okay, then what is he telling her? I tried to ask him, but he said due to the possibility of going into executive session, he cannot talk about that. Okay, I understand that. Then on May 15th on Bisbee People website, Councilperson Serena Sullivan wrote, I am quoting her, well, since there is a conflict between the Bisbee ordinance and Arizona bill, we look to the Arizona Constitution for guidance. Arizona Constitution states that when local law supersedes law in matters that are local, this is a local issue, and question is where that state law can be enforced upon the city of Bisbee. Ends. That's the end of it. I believe this is causing more divide in this town and giving hope to a false few in this town. This is why I think there are more bags and now water bottles all over town. So these people who hope they can now get a water bottle law against usage can point to this being a problem, and we need another law. I wonder if that is why they were doing with the plastic bags all over town, showing the need for 1314. Right now, the new trash of choice is popcorn styrofoam. And if you go out to look at it, you can see it has to be hand taken to the little branches on the mesquite tree. It's unbelievable. Let's go back to the request for a possible executive session. Oh, I want something else. This ordinance, 1314, is a tax. And the taxpayer's right to vote on a tax per Bisbee chapter. So you need to all, this is the premise that Mr. Hanson might not be aware of. This is where we started our conflict, saying that it is a tax. You all saying, no, it isn't a tax. We said, state charter says if it's a tax, because there's a fee involved, and then a fee goes to the city, that it does become a tax, and that's been the point of contention. All we wanted to do was to get you all to let us vote on this, to have an election. 3 times you all voted against the town, 2/3 of this town, against allowing our constitutional right to vote. No wonder the state came down and looked at all what your action was doing. All right, let's go back to the request for a possible executive session and meeting privately with our city attorney. No way. Anything that you all say should be above board and discussed in open session. You have caused enough trouble in this town. Why continue with a closed session that you supposedly cannot talk about in public? What can you say in your meetings that you cannot tell us all? So you all please find out the law, the truth, and move on. In no way should we be giving a statement of support of something that's only talked about like suing the state by Tempe and Flagstaff and the other towns that our city attorney stated. I would love the Attorney General's takes on Attorney Britt Hansen's interpretation. Remember, your actions here tonight should be open and transparent because our town deserves your full open representation on this matter. I'm sorry I'm stuttering a little bit. Like Marie, I agree with Marie. It's been a long night.
Thank you, Ms. Susan Blackford. Councilmember Sullivan, you can comment.
Mrs. Blackford, I just wanted to correct you on a couple of things. First of all, I never went around town telling anyone that this was grandfathered in. Secondly, I don't know who my group is that you're suggesting. Third, you misquoted me on the Facebook from Bisbee People. And fourth, the Inquisitor article that you're referring to, that I don't know where those people got their information, but they were quoting it from a Bisbee Observer or something like that. And I found it because you had called me about it, and I said, I don't know what it is you're talking about, but I found it, and it did not say grandfathered in.
Yeah, it did, Serena. That's why I called you, okay?
And the last thing is, when you gave me the copy of the bill, I said no thank you, because I already read it.
That's not what you said to me.
I said no
Okay,
thank you.
okay.
Look, I'm not getting it a little she said war here, Serena.
Well, you're the one
No,
that's-
no. Let's just get it go.
A point
I'm
of
not
order.
going to be that petty, Serena.
Point of order.
It's been a long night, so let's just move on. But your quotes are exactly
Oh.
taken from your website. People can go there and read them for themselves.
They can read them correctly.
Okay. Next speaker. It will be Pamela Blunt.
Hi, my name is Pamela Blunt. I live about 2 blocks from here on Arizona Street. And I'd really like to thank all of you for the hard work you do. You read material that could easily be construed as the cure for insomnia. And you obviously read it pretty closely, and it might sound funny, but it's really important that you do that. And so I do appreciate that from everybody here who's probably ready for a good night's sleep. What really disturbs me, I agree a lot with, I can't remember your last name, with what she said, that this is, it's an encroachment on our right locally to govern ourselves the way we see fit. I don't want to see us use money for litigation that we can't afford, but I also don't see that as the only option. There has been in the past, I believe, with the, when we desired to pass something for marriage equity to support our LGBT brothers and sisters here, and we couldn't do that. We had to do civil unions, and the state gave us a really hard time. We did have lawyer groups that were willing to support us, and I don't know if that's an option, but maybe litigation isn't the only option. Maybe it's too early to even think about that. But what someone suggested about being in a coalition with other cities that are having the same problem sounds important. And it sounds like it's about more than plastic bags, although I do support that ban. So thank you again for your time. I don't want to take up more of it.
Thank you very much, Pamela Blunt. Next, we have Margot McCartney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and again, I too commend you. You do a mammoth job. You've done it. You read these things and you understand them, and that's what you're elected to do. And you don't get paid much. I don't know if you get paid anything. You just do it. But once again, we're here to discuss not the plastic bags, but the SB 1241. I certainly, I too am a lawyer. I was listening to Britt Hansen talk. It's a very complicated thing, and I understand if you if you're going to go into executive session, it is similar to an attorney-client. He's your attorney, you're the client, and if you're involved in a legal issue, there's something called an attorney-client privilege. And it doesn't mean you can never talk about this again in your lives. Your lips are not sealed, until you're buried, but you're not allowed to talk about it until the issue is either in motion or resolved. And I think that's your decision. But I think it's an important one to consider, whatever you discover or decide to do. I think that, again, we elect people to make decisions for us. We don't get together and decide where the stop signs are going to be, or how long the red light will be red, or where the lines in the DOT does that. We're not allowed to decide everything individually, and we elect the council, and then the council passes laws, and the council passed a bag ban. I think it's really interesting that after we passed the civil union, several other cities in Arizona followed suit and did the same kind of thing. After we passed the bag ban, several other cities did the same thing. I like that coalition, and I hope the council will consider joining that coalition in whatever their resolution might be. I have a letter that was written by the city manager of Peoria to Governor Ducey, suggesting that, and I'd like to submit that to the mayor and council to read, to distribute, whatever. It's just something to consider, suggesting that rather than be divisive and hostile about it, to bring together a group of stakeholders on both sides and allow them to work on issues like this and others related to sustainability. The letter goes on to say that this is a local matter, and the impact of plastic bags on local governments' recycling and litter programs are unique to each city. Cities that engage in materials handling of their own recyclables have significantly different interests than cities that use private contractors. Plastic bags were once a cheap and convenient way to carry consumer goods. However, over 100 billion end up in landfills each year. At the same time, a large number of plastic bags that do get recycled incorrectly, creating costly repairs for machinery. And I've seen some of those things on television where the bags get caught in machinery and they have to stop everything they're doing and pull them out and fix the machinery. And he says, Governor, as you know, there's a growing number of Americans that are starting to see and worry about the effects of unsustainable practices. And that's generally what this is. It's not a specific, it's an unsustainable practices. Recognizing that a veto of this bill does not prevent its reintroduction next year, I would like to propose a solution. And then he proposes the coalition of people to try to work something out. But and Mrs. Blackford was right. Those styrofoam cups are just as bad. They get into everything. I think it's a tough decision, but I do agree that we are a charter city. We do have some rights. And I think if we can, however we join that coalition, I think we have to push to keep Bisbee on the side of sustainability. I think it's important. We're a little town, we should be sustainable. I don't for a minute think that all these businesses are leaving because we have plastic bag bans. I think they're leaving because Walmart came in and offers everything from China, for nothing, and people don't shop locally anymore. I personally do not shop at Walmart, never will. But, I think because of that, it shuts down all the big businesses, all the small businesses, and I think we should have lots of small businesses. So anyway, I just hope that, California, as an entire state, is banning plastic bags and plastic bottles, I think. They're getting rid of it all. So, you know, you have a whole state doing that, and I really think that the whole nation will follow. And Serena, I think you do a terrific job. I just want to say thank you to both you and Jean for putting this on the table tonight. Thank you.
I think at this point in time, Ms. Blackford,
No, she said one or two misstatements, and I wrote them in. That's all I want to say. And I'll say it from here if you want.
well, we'll end up back and forth.
Well, the thing is about California, you all know.
Oh, okay. No, it's not necessary. California, correct me if I'm mistaken, will be on the ballot next year. It's not a done deal in California. I mean, that's what I know.
And all I want to say is that State California gave the right to vote to its citizens.
Right.
And that's all we're asking for. We ask all you want to let us vote on this.
Right. Okay. Here we are, council. And so I guess our heads are going to start turning over to Mr. Hanson. So, I mean, you had some valid points about executive session, but we're not in litigation necessarily. And so I think that we need to discuss this in public and questions that the council might have. See, if it would go to litigation, there's a little problem. In the contract that we signed with the county, that contract says the county may be able to pursue litigation, or they may not be able to pursue litigation, depending upon time consumption, et cetera. So if we would pursue litigation, it appears to me that there's a good chance the city would have to hire outside counsel. You want to speak to on that?
Well, first, do you want to discuss that in public? I'd be glad to discuss it, but I don't even think we've talked about potential litigation yet. But if we
Okay.
want to address it now, I will be glad to address it.
Okay.
So, all right. First of all, I don't think, I can't presume how the council will come down on this. So I just have to say, if the council wanted to do something about SB 1241, that something doesn't have to be litigation. That something could be easy as writing a letter to the Attorney General, the Senate President, and the Governor, and the House Majority Leader saying, we see that you passed SB 1241. We believe that that is unconstitutional as applied to the charter city of Bisbee, Arizona. Thank you very much. And if they would like to take action, and we will continue to implement SB, or the plastic bag ban. So that would be one option. Of course, the Attorney General would then, if they chose, file suit. Another option would be to sue the state for a declaratory judgment saying that it was SB 1241 was unconstitutional. That would not cost all that much money because we have a flat fee contract with you. The kind of out I had in that contract might have been misconstrued that we would be seeking that as a way to get out of anything that was going to be time consuming. I don't see that this kind of litigation is particularly time consuming because it isn't going to involve a lot of depositions. It's not going to involve a lot of discovery. It's pretty much a legal issue, and that involves writing briefs. So if the city chose to go that route, yes, we would represent the city. And it would not cost hardly anything. I can't say that it would cost absolutely zero because there might be some, printing and Xeroxing and that kind of thing. You're printing out documents. But anyway, I don't see it as a costly option. But I think the simpler option, if you wanted to pursue that route of doing something about SB 1241, is tell the Attorney General that we're going to implement the plastic bag ordinance or continue implementing it, and let them take the next step. Another option along the same lines would be that the city, I think, would have, see, this is where I get into strengths and weaknesses, which I really hate to discuss in open. But you've asked me to do that. I presume all the council's on the same wavelength here. I'm seeing some nods no. So I think you all need to decide whether I should be telling strengths and weaknesses and strategy in open session. If you say yes, I'll be glad to do it. But I think the whole council needs to weigh in on that. And
Well, let me just say this. This was placed on the agenda it seems to me there's going to be two options why this was placed on the agenda. Number one, a clarification from our city attorney of what the law actually entails, or B, a possible challenge of some sort to this particular state law. So, it may be a combination of both to a certain degree. It can only be one of those two things, a clarification of what the state law entails, and whether Bisbee supersedes state law, or the state supersedes, or this was another maneuver to try to get into litigation, maybe join up a Flagstaff or Tempe to challenge it in the courts. Maybe Councilmember Sullivan and/or Connors might clarify that for me, so I'm not exactly sure
Mayor?
why this was on the agenda. Councilmember Connors.
No. There was no conspiracy.
You were correct in your first two statements that we were seeking clarification on where Bisbee stands in respect to the bill that passed with our ordinance already in place. We wanted to have clarity since there's been a lot of back and forth information going on. And with that clarity comes action. So we are trying to figure out what is the proper action to take. Nobody wants to waste city funds on a lawsuit that's not worth it or that we don't need. Certainly not what I want to do. And we are not suggesting that we band up with Tempe and Peoria and those other ones either. We're seeking the easy route to keep our ordinance in place.
Well,
Mayor?
Councilmember Connors.
Thank you, Mayor. And with the council person Sullivan's and mine, and 2/3 of the population of Bisbee for the bag ban, I think, we're speaking for the 2/3 of the population that are for this bag ban.
So correct me if I'm mistaken, the only way this is going to be, this SB 1241 is going to be overturned, there's only one, it appears to me there's only two ways we can go. Eric Varner suggested a statewide initiative, but more likely the way it would be overturned is through the courts. I don't know any other avenues that could be overturned. Am I correct in my analysis, Mr. Hanson?
Well, as I suggested, Mayor, a way to, again, I can't presume which way the council would vote. How many are for doing something or not doing something? But I'm going to have to assume in order to answer your question, that there was a majority member of the council that would like to continue implementing the bag ban. And if that were the case, the easy, simple way would be to, as I suggested, to write a letter to the Attorney General and the governor and other state officials saying, we believe it's unconstitutional as applied to the city of Bisbee. We'll continue implementing the ban. And we continue implementing the ban. Given that Safeway has indicated that they will continue honoring the ban, and Safeway is by far the largest dispenser in the past of plastic bags, I think the burden is on the Attorney General at that point. A combination strategy would be to do that, and then, and again, I'm not suggesting this, I'm just trying to throw out options, and then say, well, we'll put it on the ballot in 2016 as well. And for the voters of the city of Bisbee to actually put in the charter itself. That would be another option as well, which would be a way to undercut any state action against the city of Bisbee. How can they argue with that? That's what people seem, at least some people that are opposed to the bag ban are asking for. Again, throwing out options, not making suggestions or recommendations. That's your job.
Councilmember Connors?
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Britt, what happens if the ban is kept? We put it on the ballot. The citizens vote for the ban. What's the recourse at that point?
Recourse by the state?
No, the citizens to get it, because then it would become part of our charter, correct?
Correct.
So then we just wait 5 or 8 years for a charter review, and then we get that taken out of our charter.
I guess I'm not following
Exactly.
the question.
Exactly. Thank you.
Councilmember Dunn.
Yes. I guess in terms of legal issues too that you have not addressed, this bill 1241 does not specifically state that it's retroactive.
Correct.
Also, there is a violation of the single subject provisions of the Arizona Constitution.
There are arguments to be made on both of those grounds. Again, do you want me to talk about how strong or how weak I think they are?
No, well, I just think I support your suggestion that we indicate to the Attorney General that we're continuing to move forward with this, and we feel it's unconstitutional for these three reasons, at least. Also, I can't help but make the statement, we were criticized in passing our bag ban ordinance for taking 3 years of public discussion to develop this legislation. I want to remind people that this bill, State Bill 1241, was passed as a striker bill that denied public input from communities that would be implemented by this impact. So there was absolutely no public discussion of this bill when it was passed, 1241.
Just an aside for a minute.
No public discussion when you all voted on it.
Just an aside for a second. I remember on March the 3rd, when this was put before the council to possibly throw it to the vote of the people, speakers came up, certain members of the council said, we elect representatives to make those decisions. Aren't the people in Phoenix your representatives too?
Mayor,
Councilmember
they're
Connors.
not looking out for our welfare. They're looking out for their own and the people that are surrounded that, and that's fine, that's the game. This is the game, I mean, everybody knows, I said it earlier, if it's difficult, people don't want to work for it. People that wanted this plastic bag ban waited 3+ years. We can mince over the last 1.5 years, 4.5, however it comes out, it doesn't really matter, because there are facts, and then there are real facts in Bisbee. So the fact of the matter is, this is just barely a year old on Earth Day. And people waited for 3+ years to try to see this come to fruition. And it hasn't had a moment to stand and enjoy itself for a moment. However, the people who are aware, eyes open, and are involved can see the difference this has made in our town. So we can talk about a tax, it's a tax. If you pay it, bring a bag and you don't pay the tax. How many times is it just they don't want to be told what to do? We're being told what to do. It's so ironic, it's this issue. If it wasn't the bag bans, I know people would be lining up saying, we're not going to take what Phoenix is shoving down our throats. I know it. So let's have a vote. Let's vote on this right now.
Let me make this point. You might have some valid points here, but that's not what we're dealing. We're not dealing with that. Whether it's good, bad, we're dealing with state law.
Let's vote on it.
SB 1241 says
Let's vote on it.
that plastic bags, etc., are legal. That's what we're here. That's what we're discussing. We're not discussing whether it's cleaner for the environment.
Let's
or it's
vote
not.
on it.
What's the point of voting on it? We already have state law.
Because then there would be an answer. Then there would be definitive. We could give the mayor, we could give the city manager and the city attorney direction.
We had a vote on March the 3rd, and 4 council members, Connors, Hanson, Dunn, and Sullivan, voted not to let the people vote on this. You said, no, we don't want the people to participate.
We agreed not to make it easier for the people to have to be able to vote on it. We wanted them to do what was in the Constitution and our charter. We didn't make those numbers up. They were there. We didn't jury rig those numbers to make it more difficult to make an initiative or something, Mayor Ertley.
I dare say this. If that would have gone to the vote of the people, if council would have...
We would have had 2/3 of the vote would have been to continue the bag ban, because that's a real number.
That's
2/3.
speculation.
By me or by Susan Blackbird? It's speculation. Because she used the same 2/3 number, and nobody challenged her in her speculating whether 2/3 of the population was behind her or not. I'm not having fun up here, Mayor. You're picking and choosing, just like everybody in this room picks and chooses what they want to, and nobody's persuaded us. Just because they're mad, they're angry, and they didn't like the outcome. That's not a reason to change the rules. That's not a reason to bend over backwards. Make these folks work, just like we're working our butts off to do what we can up here. And it's over. This is so done. This is so done. You talk about divisiveness, it's Susan Blackbird and the likes that are divisive. It's not me and Serena Sullivan and maybe once in a while Doug Dunn, and she's too early. She's too early. She's not divisive at all. But it's us.
What we're dealing with tonight is,
I'm so tired.
we're dealing with the state law, and all the speculation, whether 3/4 of the town support it, whether 1/4 is against it.
2/3. It's 2/3. Susan Blackford said 2/3.
Well, there was a survey done. I don't know the validity of the
I want to
survey.
see all the people who said, no, I don't want to sign that petition. I want to see that list. We got 675 people that wanted that on a petition and wanted it repealed. I didn't see these are the people who didn't vote for it. These are the people who refused to sign that.
Well,
We're done.
Well, Councilmember Connors, I'll be with you, just one more final. Then if you're so certain 2/3 of the town,
Susan Blackford is, I gotta be.
if you're so certain that 2/3 of the town would have voted to keep the ban in effect, then why did you vote not allowing the people to make that decision?
I just told you, because they had to get an initiative. We already voted on it. Bring it up again. Bring up an ordinance to repeal the ordinance, and let's vote on it.
Mayor?
Let's vote on it.
Councilmember Klein.
You know, we are way off of the agendized item. It has been a long day. I haven't been home since 7:20 this
And
morning.
I've been out of my house earlier,
And-
okay?
And I think we need to get back to whether we are going to go into executive session or if we're going to have the discussion here.
Mayor,
Councilmember Dunn.
I guess I'm ready to take action on what I heard as a proposal from our city attorney, and that is that we inform the governor and attorney general that we feel this bill was passed for 3 different reasons, is unconstitutional. The fact that it's contrary to our charter, it's not been stated specifically to be retroactive. It violates the single subject provisions of the Arizona Constitution. We're intending to move forward with the continual implementation of this until such time that we are challenged. And that's certainly, if that seems appropriate, I'm willing to make that motion. If you think we need to go into executive session to make that decision, I'm willing to do that.
I would imagine that all state law that goes before the legislature is very closely scrutinized by the Attorney General's office. And I'm sure that when that was before the legislature, the Attorney General's office said, that's not a violation. That's not unconstitutional. They scrutinize every one of those laws very closely.
What are you basing that on?
Mr. Mayor, the Attorney General generally does not review legislation. They have, the legislature has legislative counsel, which reviews that. And how they do it in a striker bill, I can't tell you. I'm sure there was some legal analysis done, but generally the Attorney General does not do that review.
Yeah, but I'm sure the legislature's legal counsel does correspond with the Attorney General's office, probably a lot.
Is that fact? Why did you say that? Just so that people think that they talk to each other? I don't understand, Mayor. Why would you say that?
Councilmember Sullivan.
I would like to move that we do exactly what Doug Dunn just stated.
Second.
Can you restate that again, Mr. Dunn?
I move that we inform the Attorney General, the Governor and Attorney General, that we feel that Bill, lose the number of it, 1241, is unconstitutional for the 3 reasons that we've stated, and that we are intending to continue to enforce that ordinance until such time that we are challenged.
I second.
You can talk.
I would amend
Councilmember Sullivan.
that to not provoke a challenge.
Good.
What was the amendment?
Not to provoke a challenge. At the
I
end.
agree.
At the end, he said until such time that is challenged. I'd say leave that portion out.
You could move to amend Council Member Dunn's motion, or Councilmember Dunn could withdraw his motion and restate it. That might be a
I
simpler.
withdraw, and you want to restate it for me?
Okay. I move that we direct our city attorney to draft a letter to the Attorney General and all other parties necessary to inform them that we will continue our bag ban, and on the grounds that the bill, SB 1241, is unconstitutional for the 3 reasons stated.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? I'll just reiterate, this is state law, SB 1241, and I'm amazed that at one point in time, council members up here say, we trust our representatives to make decisions for us, but when it goes against them, I guess they don't trust them. So the representatives in Phoenix, you don't trust, and you trust the ones here. So it goes both ways. If you trust your representatives, you trust them all. So anyway, I'm done. Any other comments?
I think you're really simplifying the situation.
I really am.
And that is not the case.
Any other comments from the council? Ms. Coronado, need a roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Connors,
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein,
Nay.
Councilmember Dunn,
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Mayor Arnley.
Nay, motion passes 4-3.